on 90.9 FM WJAB. No, it is not Carlos Santana, but I feel like you were channeling him there. That's Charles Owens from his debut album, Who I Am, with one titled I Remember. Just before that, Out of Mobile, Roman Street with Mr. Morris, featuring Vincent Ingala and Kenny G with the Menina Mocha. This is the Latin Jazz House. I'm your host, Erica Foxx, and here in the studio, for the first time, at least on the air, I believe. I know the first time here on the Latin Jazz House. But yes, no stranger to WJAB, Charles Owens. Good morning to you, sir.
Good morning, Erica. Thank you so much for having me this morning.
We're excited. Congratulations on your new CD,
Thank
Who
you.
I Am. And we're going to delve deep into that in a few moments. But for those who may not have ever met Chuck, that's how I know him, is Chuck. We never have called him Charles. I guess when you're in the business realm, it will be Charles.
Well, and when you've known somebody 30 years, like we've known each other,
it's Chuck.
It's Chuck, yeah.
So tell us a little bit about you, who you are, for those who may not know.
Well, I'm a Huntsville native, first of all, and I am a Tuskegee University graduate. I'm a father. I'm a software engineer. I am a published photographer. I've had my work published in over 11 international magazines, and I am a musician-songwriter. And I've been very fortunate to work on quite a few different projects, from movies to TV shows to commercial artists to even having a deal with Universal Motown for about 6 years. So
wow.
Yeah, so that's
You're truly a Renaissance man.
Yeah.
That's what that tells me. So your early beginnings, let's get to the some of the meat of you getting introduced to music. What were you listening to, or who put a radio in front of you or a record in front of you?
So my earliest recollections of doing music is in the house with my father, my parents.
Mm-hmm.
And my dad loved music, and he introduced me to Curtis Mayfield and Stevie Wonder and Al Green. And when I was a little bit older, like in middle school, we had a little neighborhood band where we had guys that could play bass and guitar and drums and keyboards, and we would perform for our parents in the summertime. This is like in the 6th, 7th grade.
How old? Oh, 6th, 7th grade. Okay, about 10 or 11, 12?
Yeah, 10, 11, 12. Uh-huh. And what was interesting about that is I played guitar. My best friend at the time played bass across the street, and we would challenge each other. So if you couldn't play the latest Rick James or Cameo or Lakeside or Prince song, don't even come out the house. And this is like 12 years old where we're learning this stuff off the radio. So I was fed a lot of funk during those years, which influences a lot of the music that I do now. Mm-hmm. So that's my earliest, invitation or recollection of doing music. Mm-hmm. Then I played formally in the jazz ensembles in middle school, jazz ensemble in high school. I played for the choirs in high school and used to play in churches around town.
At what high school?
I went to Johnson High School.
Mm-hmm. Jaguars.
Yeah, Johnson Jaguars.
Mm-hmm.
And interestingly enough, I picked up the bass in the 9th grade, in September in the 9th grade, and we had our Christmas concert in December that year. And Mr. Wesley, after me only being on the bass for about 3 or 4 months, he actually asked my dad if I could come to A&M, and he'd have a scholarship waiting for me.
Wow.
So I was self-taught on bass, and that's the instrument that I've really gravitated a lot towards.
So
naturally,
he invited you to Alabama A&M, so how did you end up at Tuskegee?
So Alabama A&M at the time did not have engineering. They had engineering technology, and I wanted to major in engineering, and that's how I ended up at Tuskegee.
Okay.
So, but if they had an engineering program at the time, I probably would have ended up on the Hill.
Well, now it's booming.
Yes,
so
it is.
You
Very
tell
much
some
so.
others to come on over here.
Very much so.
To the Hill and get introduced to the engineering aspects of their career and their matriculation. And Chuck, so you've gone to Tuskegee and you're in engineering. Does engineering somehow envelop music in some form or fashion?
So for most people, it does not. However, for me, I've been, when you take those Myers-Briggs personality test, there's this test that kind of tells you what your personality is. I'm always one of these people that's way on a quadrant or an outlier by myself. I've been described as a complete left and complete right brain person.
Wow.
So the engineering aspect, I'm real meticulous. I love the process of engineering the music, which is the mixing and adding the effects. It's like watching paint dry for most people, but for me, I love that. But I also love the creation part, playing the bass and guitar and keyboards and drums and just creating the music and the sound palettes that I'm going to use for a song. So the engineering side requires a very meticulous person who's very honed in on the details. The creative side is, somebody who can have a complete open mind with their approach to doing things. So for me, the engineering part helped a great deal, especially when it comes to the details and understanding how sounds go together and different frequencies and how to mix properly and stuff like that.
So you play the guitar. What else do you play? I know keyboards.
I play a little keyboards. I play a little bass. I play a little drums.
So self-taught on those other instruments as well?
I'm self-taught on everything except guitar. I actually had lessons. My dad took me to guitar lessons when I was a kid, and I actually got some formal training on guitar. I actually started playing classical guitar in the beginning, and a more Latin classical guitar. And so I have never forgotten those techniques of playing, the classical guitar. And it just bleeds through almost everything I do on the guitar now,
Yes, it comes through on that song. I remember we played that just before you and I started talking. And I don't say it flippantly that I feel like you are channeling Carlos Santana on that particular song. Who is it, when it comes to the Latin music, the Latin part of what you do, who do you like to listen to, maybe model your stylings after?
Well, you hit the nail on the head, Carlos Santana. Believe it or not, I listen to a lot of Prince. And so when I was listening to interviews and read articles about Prince and who his influences were, Carlos Santana was right at the top. And I said, so that kind of explained why I love Carlos Santana. I like a lot of Prince music. He just transferred a lot of that technique onto R&B and pop music. Prince did. So, but I love Carlos Santana. I love his style. I love his command of the instrument. It's just amazing, and one of the cleanest guitar players.
Yes.
Just an incredible guy to try to pattern yourself after.
And I'm sure his craft really has probably gone to another level. As he married Terry Lynn Carrington. She's a traditional jazz, I want to call her percussionist. She's a drummer, though, but when you see her on television, she has this full set. It's almost like the drummer for the group Styx, if you've ever seen videos of Styx. And he has like 18, I'm exaggerating now, but 18 drums in front of him in 3 different cymbal sets. And so I'd like to think that he would hone his craft now that he has that entity in his life. So you like Carlos Santana and Prince. So what was the premise for this brand new album titled Who I Am?
Well, one of the premises is this person standing across from me right now. Every time I would see you out, you say, "When you gonna do your album? When you gonna do something for yourself? When you gonna do something for yourself?" So I listened to you. I was turning 50 this year, and it felt like that was a box that needed to be checked. Me doing my own CD, since I've done a lot of work for everybody else. I just had never done my own project before. So you got in my ear a number of years ago, and that's one of the big reasons why I finally did this project.
Well, I'm glad I can help put the fire under the feet. I know in the early days of WJAB, we were still, not just us, but a lot of stations were still playing cassettes. And I still have your cassettes.
Oh, wow.
That you gave me. And I missed my last car because I could play cassettes in my car. But I still have your cassettes, and those are early days, mixtapes and things like that. So I do know your humble beginnings.
You sure do.
Of your music, and I just applaud you on this project. It is excellent. You were talking about how many instruments did you play on this, or how many guitars on this particular tune?
So on this particular tune, it starts out with a nylon acoustic guitar, and the meat of the song is a steel string acoustic that I'm playing. But I also play an electric guitar. A lot of the stuff that reminds you of Carlos Santana is done on a semi-hollow body guitar, electric guitar, and then some of it's done on a Fender Strat electric guitar. So there are 4 different guitars on here, and I'm playing live bass on it as well. And all the strings you hear in the background and bells, that's all synthesizers. And I did the drum programming as well.
That is excellent. That's talent. That is a gift. I like it. All vocals and instruments, guitar, bass, keys, and drum programming by Charles Owens. Truly a self project.
It is.
That you have put together. Who have you worked with? And at your birthday party, you had you had great chemistry. You were playing with Element 11.
Yes.
So who else have you worked with?
Okay, I work with, let's see, Spanky. I worked with some guys from Cameo some years ago. I worked with the guitar player from Lionel Richie's group, Daryl Jones. When they did the movie here, Jordan Walker Perlman, he commissioned me to do the soundtrack for the movie Constellation. Some R&B artists that never really, some hip hop artists that never really made it out. The guy named Jackie Chain from this area who had to deal with Universal Motown for a while. So those are some of the groups that I worked. I produced one of the local legends here, Mark Lacey. His very first spoken word CD, which I won Producer of the Year from the Stromberg Center in Harlem for production on his CD. And so, those are some of the people I've...
So I own that CD, so I need to have you sign it.
Okay.
Sorry, Mark. You gave it to me, Mark, so I have that already, that connection there. So let's step back to Constellation, and that was what year?
That was 2007 or 8, I believe.
7 or 8, and we were happy to have Jordan here, the director of the movie here at WJAB. Our former morning announcer Joe Cook did that interview, and Joe was in the movie also, and Billy D. Williams was up here. That was a huge deal. And what was your participation in the movie and in the soundtrack and all that?
So one of the, at the time I had a commercial studio in Madison, and the director, Jordan, he needed a song engineered. And for that, he was trying out for the soundtrack. So he asked me if I could engineer this particular song. I said, sure. So he brought it to me. Loved the engineering work I did on the song. And he said, hey, I want to redo a particular song that DeVere Pride has done. So I talked to DeVere, and he gave me the song. And I told Jordan, I said, it works, but not really works right for the film. It needs to be beefed up a little bit. So I added some strings and some piano and kind of adjusted the drum tracks, and he loved my version of DeVere Pride's song.
Wow.
Who's a local legend bass player here in the Tennessee Valley. If you're listening, what's up, DeVere? And
DeVere Pride Trio, hey.
Yes. So I redid that. So he liked the work I did so much on that. He said, well, listen, can you produce the soundtrack? And I said, sure. So he collected all the songs he wanted for the soundtrack, and then he said, well, I need some more songs. Can you do some songs for the soundtrack? So I said, sure. So I wrote about 5 songs for the soundtrack and produced it and engineered it. And I even did some of the score that's in the movie. So we had a really close working relationship together, and that's really how I got involved,
So any thinkings to do any more movie soundtracks to get into that realm of your music?
I would love to. My most important job in life has been a father, and so and I will have time, I anticipate, in the next year or so to get back into really pursuing some of that stuff. But I haven't really thought about that in years. So, but doing this album has really, awakened the juices for me to start recording and writing again. So I'm loving doing this process of creation again. So who knows? Now,
you said that, I believe, at your birthday party and your CD release party, you were already in the works for your next album. Is that correct?
No.
Not yet?
Not yet. Now, I have a ton of music that's never been heard. I've written maybe 15 or 1,600 pieces of original music in my lifetime. So I've got a ton of music that's been recorded. And, a couple of songs on this album actually are remakes of some stuff I'd done previously.
So you're like Tupac and Prince and Beastie Boys, as they've been saying lately. They've got a bunch of music in the vault that they have not finished or haven't put
exactly
to vinyl.
I've got snippets. I've probably got 500 snippets of like guitar, bass, and guitar, bass, and drums, or keyboards, bass, and drums, or just guitar, just bass, or whatever, just ideas. And then I have completed. I probably have another 500 to 1,000 songs that are just complete, of just full songs that I've never.
So you just need to make the time to put it all together on CD, and let's just start playing it.
But you know what? A lot of those songs lend themselves, they're part of a process of creating something else. You know what I'm saying? So you're trying to piece something together. You've got an idea. It doesn't really come together like you want it to, but you still got the song there. You know, you've played all these instruments, and when you play it back, you're like, that's not exactly what I want, so I'm just going to put that on the shelf until I really get the sound that I'm looking for. So I would imagine for a lot of songwriters and producers, they have a lot of songs that come about from that process of trying to create what they hear in their head, and they might miss the mark a little bit. So they still got the result, they've got a complete song, but it's just not really what they were wanting or really what they were expecting.
You know when you feel it, when it's ready.
Exactly.
So this is done though. Who I Am, and where can people find this to add to their CD collection?
Well, you can find this on iTunes. You can find it on Google Play. You can find it on Spotify. If you want a hard copy CD, you can go to www.cowensmusic.com and order as many CDs as your heart desires, and they will be sent to you right away.
So say that web address again, once again.
www.cowensmusic.com.
C. Owens, that means Charles Owens, or if you know him like I do, Chuck Owens. Congratulations to you on this awesome new CD, Who I Am.
Thank you, Erica.
And which one is your favorite on here?
Oh, wow. You know, it depends on what day. I really love
it's Friday, it's cloudy.
I love I Remember, the Latin jazz tune. I also love the last song in the album, Figure Out How to Love. I think it's apropos for the times that we're going in, that we're living in right now, just from a lyrical perspective.
All right, we'll close out with that. Figure Out How to Love. It's Charles Owens, his debut CD, Who I Am. Thank you so much for coming on the Latin Jazz House today.
Thank you for having me, Erica.
We look forward to hearing more Latin stuff from you, because you have some on my cassettes. I need to go find them and
Yes, I
put
do.
them on CDs so that we can play them. We appreciate you being by here on this morning.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me, Erica.
This is the Latin Jazz House here on 90.9 FM. Here is Charles Owens, Figure Out How to Love on 90.9 FM, WJAB.
Figured out how to put a man way up in the sky, and we've got machines and computers that can free up our time, portable things that can make us fantasies seem so real. Loneliness is all that we feel. How do we find the empathy and learn to see through each other's eyes? The way we are just ain't meant to be. We're responsible for each other's lives. Why can't we? Why can't we figure out how to love? Why can't we? Why can't we figure out how to love? Why can't we? Why can't we figure out how to love? Why can't we? Why can't we figure out how to love? We figured out how to not believe and still blame him when we don't understand. We figured out how to judge the innocent and still praise the evil that lie in men. And we figured out how to make a child without making not try to help each other when all of us were kin from the start? Shame on us to not live the golden rule. The change we want is all up to us. Why can't we? Why can't we figure out how to love? Why can't we? Why can't we figure out how to love? Why can't we? Why can't we figure out how to love? Why can't we? Why can't we figure out how to love?
The gentleman that I'm about to introduce lived with me before I was even born. And by me saying this is I saw all his records basically at home as I was growing up. And it's an honor to